Are we live? Live. And what is up with it, everybody? Live from the studios of WIUR at the La Penta Student Union at Iona University. It's Woolley Mammoth Wednesdays. I'm your host, Cameron Woolley, bringing you the best and only the best sports on campus. Don't really got much to talk about today. Is really the dead period in sports where the only things that are really happening are sort of the NBA regular season, that's sort of trudging on. And I guess the NHL trade deadline that's sort of heating up. But, the NHL trade deadline normally doesn't breed a lot of big moves, although the Timo Meyer thing is something to absolutely keep our eyes on. Patrick Kane as well. But other than that, nothing else really happening right now. The dead period between the Super Bowl and opening day for baseball is certainly a tough time in sports indeed, but there are certain things happening, especially in Giant Land, that being the New York Football Giants. Daniel Jones is set to become a free agent, and I know it's probably not going to get there, and this is going to be resolved, but there have been headlines and numbers thrown around, and I guess I just wanted to touch on that. Jones demanded, or not demanded, but it is said that there are reports that have come out from reputable journalists that Jones's asking price is $45 million. Now, to that, I say good luck because Jones is not getting that from the Giants. I think Joe Shane is way too smart of a human being to give Daniel Jones a Patrick Mahomes esque contract when we're not even sure if he's Kirk Cousins. But also, I doubt any team is going to give him that on the open market. But again, these are sort of negotiations, and I want to touch on the value of Daniel Jones and what I think his value should be. And also, I'd like to talk about Saquon Barkley and that whole situation, which is probably going to end up with him being on our team, given that the Giants aren't really budging from their initial price, and Saquon obviously wanting to get as much money as he can, which is his right, which is absolutely his right. I'm not blaming him for going after the most money. I mean, he's a human being. As human beings, especially in this country, we'd love to go out and seize the opportunity that has us making the most money. And for Saquon Barkley, that money is probably not going to come from the Giants. And it's also a thing that has become more widely accepted in the last, I don't know, decade or so of the NFL, that the value of a running back is nowhere close to what it was before. Even as recently as 20 years ago, the value of a running back has fallen off significantly. Because when you look at the data, and the data shows that the Super Bowl champion isn't paying their leading rusher that much money. And that is something that a lot of teams have learned the hard way most of the time. The Dallas Cowboys, they paid Zeke Elliott that big contract. The Carolina Panthers paid Christian McCaffrey that big contract, and that went so badly that they had to offload him to San Francisco. The Titans, Derrick Henry, that's not really working out well at all. And I'm trying to think of other examples of paying running backs big money. But those are the notable ones I can think of off the top of my head. And that is a situation that the Giants probably don't want to end up in, to say the least. They do not want to end up in a situation where they are paying someone who shouldn't be getting paid, someone who is easily replaceable. As much as I love Saquon Barkley, as much of a game-breaking talent as he is, a running back is simply a running back. You can find running backs in the 4th round, 5th round of the draft. It's really not that hard. You just need to find a guy who's fast and need to have a good offensive line. And I guess you sort of need the instincts to sort of hit the right holes. You need the vision. But again, That's easy enough to find where you don't have to spend upwards of $15 million a year in your salary cap to a running back who is, again, replaceable. Um, but yeah, Saquon Barkley, love him. He was a beacon of light, sort of something to entertain us during the dark ages. And I know, like, the Giants, they became the poster child for not drafting a running back super high. The Saquon Barkley pick, whether we want to admit it or not, completely tanked the draft value of running backs. Because let me just ask you a quick question: Who at the running back position has been drafted in the first round in a somewhat high position since Saquon Barkley? You can't really think of many off the top of my head. Not many who have been super successful, that is. But before Saquon Barkley, there was at least one running back going in the first round. There were running backs going very high. And leading up to Saquon Barkley, you had Zeke Elliott in 2016. You had Leonard Fournette in 2017. Then you had Saquon Barkley in 2018. In 2019, there wasn't really anybody super valuable enough or good enough to be drafted super high. And I think that is due in part to the Saquon Barkley pick and the Zeke Elliott pick and the Leonard Fournette pick. Because drafting running back super high. Drafting a running back is signaling a win now move, or getting a running back via trade or free agency. That's seen as a win now move where you have the talent in place, you have the foundation, you have the line, you have the quarterback, you have the receivers, you have everything but a running back who can sort of add an extra element to your game as a team. And honestly, when you're picking really high, that's not the position you're in. You're not in a one guy away position. You're not in the position to have the luxury to take a running back. And the Giants are like, oh, you don't want to end up like the Giants with Saquon Barkley. And unfortunately, that's probably going to become Saquon Barkley's legacy. He's going to be a cautionary tale, like Herschel Walker and like Blair Thomas and guys like that, who are going to be viewed as, okay, wait, remember what happened with this guy? Don't do that again. And unfortunately, that's what Saquon Barkley's legacy is going to be. No fault of him as a player. Sure, the injuries have been bad, but that's not his fault. He was playing behind. Did you see the offensive line he was running behind that was trying to quote unquote block in front of him? If you could call it blocking. Because I haven't, in the last 10 years, I hadn't seen the Giants run block properly. I know, I guess before this year, but that was scheming. That was play design by a brilliant coach and a brilliant offensive coordinator who's going to be back for another year. But essentially my point is Saquon Barkley is a great player. Great player, great as he is. It's his position. It's not him, it's the fact that he's a running back. A running back is not worth the money he's asking for. Especially when the Giants are in a tight cap situation where they're only going to have, after a few cuts, restructures, maybe trades, they're going to have at most $50 million in cap space. You're going to have, first of all, you're going to have to give at least $35 million of that to Daniel Jones if you want to keep him here. And then you're going to have to use $10 million of that or $10 million, or maybe like $8 million to sign your draft class. And then the rest, which around like 10, 12-ish million, is money you can play around with. Money that would be going to Saquon Barkley. So essentially, you have the same team with, granted, a new Joe Shane draft class, but you still have Saquon Barkley there, and that money can be spent in much, much, much better and much more needed areas than running back. You could sign a linebacker, a defensive back, or an offensive lineman. Any position that is way more valuable and way more of a need than running back. Because let's face it, Matt Breida's not bad. Matt Breida can run behind a good line. Gary Brightwell can run behind a good line. Any fourth-round pick, you'll pluck him out of college and stick him in at the starting slot. He can run behind a good line. Invest in the system. Invest in the foundation. Invest in the things that are hard to replace. Invest in the things that have been hard to find over the last 10 years or so, like linebackers and like good corners. Invest in that instead of putting $12 million a year into a guy who's on the back nine of his career. And with running backs, you know that when he falls off, he's going to fall off like really hard. He's going to hit the ground. He's going to fall flat on his face. With that $12 million cap hit that the Giants are going to try to move. They're going to have to attach picks to him to move him. If he ends up staying here and ends up falling off, which is going to happen if he stays here. It's going to happen whatever other team is dumb enough to pay him an exorbitant amount of money for a running back. That's going to happen anywhere he goes. So I'd rather it be some other team than have it be us. And again, I know I sound like I hate Saquon Barkley, but I don't. I honestly don't. It's football. Football disagrees with paying Saquon Barkley that much money. And I rest my case on that. Do what you will with it. In regards to Daniel Jones, not enough has been thrown out. Like, sure, there have been some numbers sort of speculated. $45 million, like I said, good luck. He's not getting that. Not getting it on the open market, and he's not getting it from us. Because again, Giants have limited cap space and way too many needs to invest that cap space in. And Daniel Jones, much as I love him, and I love Daniel Jones, I have kept an open mind about him throughout his entire career, even from the moment he was drafted and he was the number one public enemy. He became the NFL's whipping boy the moment he was drafted. But I always kept an open mind. Now it's like, you know what? Let's see what he's got. And then he showed us this year that potential. He won a playoff game, played one of the best playoff games I've seen from a Giant quarterback ever in history, ever. Very rarely has a Giant quarterback had an efficient of a game and as well handled of a game as Daniel Jones had against the Minnesota Vikings in the wild card game. And I know they had a horrible defense. I know their defense is dreadful. But Daniel Jones did a great job against it. He did what he needed to do. And he did more than was expected of him this year. But here's the thing. I don't want it to sound like I hate the player in question here. Because I love Daniel Jones. I've been, again, open mind. I've been open-minded about him, which is more than I can say about a few million people in the Giant fan base. But I'm not going to lie to you when I say that I don't want to end up in a situation like the Cowboys are in. I don't want to end up in a situation like the Vikings are in. And I sure as hell don't want to end up in a situation like the Browns are in. And I don't want to end up in a situation like the Broncos are in. When you pay a quarterback way too much money because that's what the market demands. Daniel Jones is a solid quarterback. There's no denying that. He has been dealt a horrible hand throughout his career. Horrible, horrible hand. I get that. I get that he's had a backwards GM and head coach through the first 3 years of his career. I get that he had awful offensive coordinators who didn't know how to tend to his strengths and nurture his weaknesses. I understand that he has had receivers who are bad, and even the ones that who were good were either injured so often that they didn't see the field enough to make an impact, or they were supposed head cases, got angry, didn't want to stay here, and got traded. I'm talking about Kadarius Toney there. And I understand that his best weapon, Saquon Barkley, was injured on and off through the first 3 years of his career. I get that. I understand it. I understand completely the situation that Daniel Jones was in. I've been screaming from the mountaintop. That's why I've kept such an open mind on him. Is that the guy's been dealt the worst hand in sports. Having Dave Gettleman as his GM the first 3 years of his career. What quarterback could survive that? Unless your name is, I'm not even going to say Mahomes, because Mahomes is as great as he is in great part because of the Chiefs' organizational structure and Andy Reid being the great coach he is. If Patrick Mahomes is given Pat Shermer in his first year as head coaches, and then having Joe Judge the 2 years after that, he's out of the league. Mahomes. Lamar Jackson? Maybe. He's talented enough. But who knows the problems that he has? And he has enough problems as it is in Baltimore with his sort of lack of ability to do certain things, like, throwing the ball in certain situations, or being forced to beat him, or being forced to beat defenses with his arm instead of his arm and his legs. But again, you cannot name me, like, what quarterback in NFL history would be able to succeed here? Who? I can think of Peyton Manning. That's one, because Peyton Manning was put into a horrible place, the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, Jim Irsay is their owner. That's all I need to say about that. Who, like, Dan Marino? Maybe. Yeah, Dan Marino. You know what? Dan Marino would do well in that system. Yes, I'm not going to question Dan Marino. Again, those are the only two off the top of my head in NFL history who I think could succeed in the situation that Daniel Jones was thrown into. The wood chipper that he was thrown into to begin his career. Peyton Manning and Dan Marino are the only guys I can think of off the top of my head who would be successful in that situation and take that team to the playoffs. Because while I understand Daniel Jones is not elite, he certainly has not been the main problem with the Giants the last few years. But the issue is, with the money that he's supposedly demanding, he's not demanding to be paid like the guy who's not the problem. He's demanding to be paid like the guy who's the reason for this team succeeding. Which we know, like, again, love Daniel Jones. Even the biggest Daniel Jones supporters in the world can agree that his success is in great part to Brian Daboll. He owes so much to him. He has made so much money off of Brian Daboll being his head coach. And this isn't a shot at Jones, because good quarterbacks need good coaches to succeed. I literally just brought up how Mahomes would not have been nearly as good as he is without Andy Reid. And if you're saying that I think Daniel Jones is comparable to Patrick Mahomes, then I don't know what planet you're living in, because Mahomes is on a different planet than Jones. Mahomes is on a different planet than every quarterback in this league. Patrick Mahomes could very well be 5 years away from being thrown into the GOAT conversation. He already is being thrown into the GOAT conversation right now. And what is he, like 27? This guy's already having a more successful career than most quarterbacks in NFL history. What, 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowls? Man, or what? Wait, does he have 3? Yeah, there has 2 or 3 MVPs. I don't know. But again, I'm not trying to say that Daniel Jones is anywhere near Mahomes. But you can't end up in a situation like the Cowboys, who, and I find it so ironic that the Giants fans who are saying, "Oh, pay Daniel Jones whatever he wants," are the same Giants fans who point and laugh at Dallas for paying Dak Prescott, who is a significantly better quarterback than Daniel Jones. Or, okay, I take that back, not significantly, but a clear upgrade from Daniel Jones. 40 million a year. And they throw shade at the Cowboys and make fun of them for paying Dak Prescott 40 million a year. Then they turn around and say, "Oh yeah, I'm perfectly fine with giving Daniel Jones 37 million a year." Now, with the furthest I'd go with Jones, I go 35. That is my stopping point. Like 35, if you want anything more than that, good luck finding it on the open market. Because there is not a single team on the planet that would give Daniel Jones what he is supposedly asking for. And I understand it's a negotiation tactic. We're still a couple weeks away from seeing the real conclusion of this story, with what, March 7th being the deadline, the franchise tag? Bottom line is, I think Daniel Jones is going to be the Giant quarterback next year. In what way that happens, I don't know. There's a chance I see the contract and I think, good Lord, we just made a massive mistake. Ending up in a Kirk Cousins dilemma, where we have a quarterback who's solid, very solid. One might even say very good in certain situations. But paying him that amount of money makes him a target for the NFL community and becoming the scapegoat for all of his team's misfortune and lack of success. I'm mostly afraid of becoming the Vikings because I don't want to be the Vikings. I don't want to be the Cowboys. We didn't hire Joe Shane and Brian Dable to be the Minnesota Vikings or the Dallas Cowboys. We hired Joe Shane and Brian Dable to be the Buffalo Bills. Actually, you know what? Better than the Buffalo Bills. We hired them to become one of the model organizations in the NFL. And I feel like up until this point, I never really questioned Shane and Dable. But if Shane ends up paying Jones the what, like 37 million a year? Or God help us if it's 40. Then my trust will be very much fractured. And I feel like a lot of other people would be inclined to agree with me when I say that my trust in Joe Shane would be very much rattled if Daniel Jones is given the massive contract that he's demanding. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. I lost my train of thought. Oh man, what was I going to say? Oh wait. This is what I was going to say. I did see something that the Giants are heavily scouting Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker, which I think is a very solid backup plan. I don't think Hendon Hooker is that great. I mean, sure, that first half of the season with Tennessee where he was being buzzed around, thrown into the Heisman conversation. Yeah, sure. I wouldn't mind him as a third round pick to be sort of a bridge for whoever we get in the future, whether that be a guy we trade for or a guy we end up trading up a lot of draft capital to draft. Because with Shane and Dable, it's about the long game. It has always been about the long game. And I don't think a random playoff appearance that was expected by nobody in the first year of their regime, I don't expect that to change. And I for one, would be very disappointed if they do decide to throw a massive bag at Daniel Jones. I would be disappointed because I know that this front office, that would tell me that this front office is not nearly as smart as I thought they were. I would honestly rather be bad for the next, what, year or two, and then be great with finding a quarterback who is undeniably elite Drafting a guy like a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, a guy like them. There's another guy I'm forgetting, or like a Quinn Ewers or someone like him. I would I would not be opposed to that. Because you know what? Tanking is not the worst thing in the world. I'd rather be bad for a couple years and figure things out and build this roster year by year than to cash in on this and be stuck in mediocrity and being good but not quite good enough. Because you know who does that? The Yankees. And if you are not aware of my opinions on the New York Yankees, I think they are one of the examples of what not to do, of absolutely what not to do when you are in a situation where you can win a championship, where your window is open. And I feel like if the Giants cash in on, or if they cash out to Jones, if they give him the $40 million a year, then I feel like that will be the direction we're heading in. Simple as that. That's a Yankee move. That is a Yankee move being made by a team who I know is smarter than them. A team who has proven to me who is smarter than them. And I want them to prove to me again that they are smarter than the Yankees. And then that's all for me today. Yeah, I think that is all for me today. That's all I wanted to touch on. I was going to get to the NHL trade deadline, but really nothing's going to happen on that front for another week and a half. So, obviously going to stay tuned on that. I was thinking about doing a thing on Timo Meyer, but I'd like to keep this to under half an hour. So, anyways, from the studios of WIUR at the La Penta Student Union at Iona University, this has been Woolley Mammoth Wednesdays. I am Cameron Woolley, wishing you a great rest of your week, a great rest of this, albeit cloudy and soon to be rainy afternoon and evening. But everyone, good luck with your classes. Midterms coming up soon. And take care.